Pride comes before the fall, but some falls echo louder than others. The neon lights of Las Vegas cast long shadows through the windows of Elite Combat Academy as Tommy the Hurricane Sullivan set up his phone camera for what he thought would be another viral training video. At 34, he was riding high on a 7-fight winning streak, his Irish accent and cocky charm making him a fan favorite and social media sensation. But success had made him reckless, hungry for attention, and tonight he decided to take aim at a living legend. "Chuck Norris," Tommy sneered into the camera as he shadowboxed washed-up old man living off jokes from 20 years ago. "I could take him with one hand tied behind me back." The words felt powerful as they left his lips, each insult designed to generate clicks and controversy. Within 6 hours, the video had 3 million views. Within 12, Tommy's world began to unravel in ways that medical science couldn't explain and his ego couldn't accept. His punches lost their thunder. His speed evaporated like morning mist, and his opponents started dismantling him with embarrassing ease. But the strangest part wasn't his sudden decline. It was that Chuck Norris never responded, not publicly. Yet mysterious men in black suits kept appearing at the gym, and the security cameras seemed to malfunction every time Tommy trained. Had Tommy awakened something he didn't understand, or was he simply losing his mind along with his career? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Hurricane's Eye. The morning after the video went viral, Tommy stood before his bathroom mirror, flexing biceps that still looked every bit as powerful as they had 24 hours earlier. The reflection staring back at him showed the same chiseled jaw, the same intense green eyes that had graced magazine covers, the same intricate Celtic tattoos spiraling down his arms like ancient war paint. Everything appeared normal, yet something fundamental had shifted. His phone buzzed incessantly on the marble countertop, notifications from Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all feeding the monster he'd created. 3.5 million views now. His manager, Sal Rodriguez, had called 14 times since sunrise, probably wanting to discuss the Chuck Norris situation. Tommy let it ring. Controversy meant attention, and attention meant money. He'd weathered storms before. The drive to Elite Combat Academy took him through the heart of Vegas, past the glittering casinos and tourist traps that had funded his lifestyle. The gym sat in an industrial district, a converted warehouse that had become home to some of the sport's biggest names. Tommy's custom Lamborghini Huracan, a purchase he'd made specifically for the irony of the name, rumbled to a stop in his reserved spot. Inside, the familiar smell of sweat, leather, and determination filled his nostrils. The gym buzzed with its usual morning energy, fighters hitting heavy bags, the rhythmic thud of gloves on pads, the sharp exhale of breath accompanying precise strikes. But today, conversations seemed to pause when he walked by, and the glances felt different, less respectful, more curious. "Hurricane." Marcus Chen, his longtime training partner, jogged over with a grin. "Bro, you've got some serious balls going after Chuck Norris. My grandmother's been sharing Chuck Norris facts on Facebook for years. She's probably putting voodoo curses on you right now." Tommy forced a laugh, but something cold settled in his stomach. Just giving the people what they want, mate. Controversy sells fights. Speaking of fights, Marcus wrapped his hands methodically. "Sal's been looking for you. Something about damage control?" Before Tommy could respond, Sal appeared from the office area, his expensive suit looking out of place among the athletic wear and fight gear. Salvador Rodriguez had been managing fighters for 23 years, and his weathered face currently wore the expression of a man trying to put out fires. "Tommy, we need to talk. Now." Sal's Brooklyn accent carried an edge that made several nearby fighters glance over. They retreated to Sal's office, a glass-walled space overlooking the main training floor. Sal closed the door and immediately launched into damage control mode. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Chuck Norris isn't just some has-been actor, Tommy. The man's got connections you can't imagine. Military, law enforcement, Hollywood." "Relax, Sal." Tommy dropped into a leather chair, projecting confidence he didn't entirely feel. "Bad publicity is still publicity. How many interview requests have come in?" 17. But that's not the point. Sal's fingers drummed nervously on his desk. "I've been in this business long enough to know when something feels wrong. I got a call this morning from someone who wouldn't give their name, asking questions about your training schedule, your habits. Journalists do that. This wasn't a journalist, Tommy. This was someone with authority in their voice. Someone who knew things about your background they shouldn't know. The cold feeling in Tommy's stomach intensified, but he pushed it down. You're being paranoid, old man. Now, about those interviews. A sharp knock interrupted them. Through the glass wall, Tommy could see Jake Morrison, the gym's head trainer, gesturing urgently. Sal opened the door. What is it, Jake? You need to see this. Jake's expression was puzzled. The security system's acting up. All of last night's footage from Tommy's training session is just gone. Not deleted, gone, like it never existed. Tommy's mouth went dry. The cold feeling spread through his chest like ice water. Technical glitch. These systems crash all the time. Jake shook his head. I've been working with security systems for 15 years. I've never seen anything like this. The timestamps are there, but the video files are completely corrupted. Just white noise and static. Sal and Jake continued discussing the technical details, but their voices seemed to come from far away. Tommy stared out at the training floor where fighters continued their routines, blissfully unaware that reality felt like it was tilting on its axis. The rational part of his mind cataloged explanations: computer malfunction, coincidence, paranoia feeding on guilt. But a deeper instinct, honed by years of reading opponents and sensing danger in the octagon, whispered that something was fundamentally wrong. He thought about the video again, his own voice echoing in his memory. I could take him with one hand tied behind me back. For the first time since filming those words, Tommy Sullivan wondered if he should have kept his mouth shut. The ordinary world. Tommy forced himself to focus on Jake's words, but the missing footage felt like a weight pressing against his chest. He stood abruptly, needing movement, needing the familiar rhythm of training to drown out the paranoid thoughts crawling through his mind. I need to hit something, he announced, cutting through Sal and Jake's technical discussion. Both men looked at him with expressions somewhere between concern and confusion. Tommy, we should talk about, Sal began. Later. Tommy was already walking away, his reflection multiplied in the gym's mirrored walls as he moved toward the equipment area. The training floor welcomed him like an old lover. This was his sanctuary, the place where everything made sense. Here, problems could be solved with precision, power, and will. He pulled on his favorite gloves, black leather worn soft by thousands of hours of use, and approached the heavy bag that had absorbed years of his frustration and ambition. The first punch felt perfect. His fist connected with satisfying force, the bag swinging in a controlled arc. Muscle memory guided him through combinations he'd drilled 10,000 times: jab, cross, hook, uppercut. Each strike was a meditation, a return to the fundamentals that had carried him from the streets of Dublin to the bright lights of Las Vegas. Around him, the gym's ecosystem continued its daily dance. Maria Santos shadow-boxed in front of the mirrors, her movements fluid and deadly despite being 8 weeks out from a title shot. 2 heavyweight prospects grappled on the mats, their breathing heavy as they worked through submission attempts. The sound of jump ropes created a steady percussion beneath it all. This was Tommy's world. Predictable, controllable, built on the simple truth that hard work and talent could overcome any obstacle. He'd spent 15 years creating this life, clawing his way up from nothing to become one of the most recognizable names in mixed martial arts. The penthouse apartment overlooking the Strip, the cars, the endorsement deals, the women who threw themselves at him, all of it had grown from seeds planted in gyms like this one. "Looking good, Hurricane," called out Danny Kowalski, a middleweight known for his wrestling background. "You ready for Blackwood next month?" The mention of his upcoming fight with Derek Blackwood should have excited him. It was a title eliminator, the kind of high-stakes bout that could launch him into superstardom or derail his career entirely. Blackwood was younger, hungrier, and had been talking about taking Tommy's spot as the division's top contender. It was exactly the kind of challenge Tommy thrived on. Instead, the thought of the fight made his stomach clench. He threw another combination at the bag, but something felt off. Not wrong exactly, just different. Like his timing was a fraction of a second slow. "Yeah," he called back to Danny, forcing enthusiasm into his voice. "Blackwood won't know what hit him." Marcus appeared beside him, already warmed up and ready for their usual sparring session. "You want to work on those takedown defenses? Blackwood's going to try to wrestle you into the ground." Tommy nodded, grateful for the distraction. He and Marcus had been training partners for 6 years. Ever since Marcus had arrived from San Francisco with Olympic wrestling credentials and a dream of MMA stardom. Their sessions were legendary in the gym, technical masterpieces that pushed both men to their limits. They moved to the octagon, a smaller replica of the cage where Tommy had built his reputation. The familiar feeling of the canvas under his feet, the sight of the chain-link walls, should have centered him completely. This was home. Marcus shot for a takedown immediately, and Tommy sprawled to defend. The movement felt natural, automatic, but something nagged at him. His reflexes seemed just slightly delayed, as if his body was receiving signals through a bad connection. "Getting slow in your old age?" Marcus grinned as they reset. Tommy forced a laugh, but the comment stung more than it should have. At 34, he was hardly ancient by MMA standards, but the sport was unforgiving to those who lost even a step. He'd built his career on being faster, sharper, more precise than his opponents. Speed was his edge. They continued for 20 minutes, working through various scenarios. Tommy's technique remained flawless. His muscle memory was still intact, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was subtly wrong. It was like playing a familiar song on an instrument that was almost, but not quite, in tune. "Good session," Marcus said as they touched gloves at the end. "You seem a little distracted, though. The Chuck Norris thing getting to you?" The question hung in the air between them. Tommy realized that Marcus was watching him with genuine concern, the kind of look reserved for friends rather than training partners. It struck him how much he valued that friendship, how few people in his life saw him as anything more than a brand or a meal ticket. "Nah," Tommy lied smoothly. "Just thinking about strategy for Blackwood." But as they left the cage and Marcus moved on to his next training session, Tommy found himself staring at his hands. They looked the same, powerful, scarred from years of combat, wrapped in the black tape that had become his signature. Yet something felt fundamentally different, as if the connection between his mind and body had been tampered with in ways too subtle to detect. The missing security footage suddenly seemed less like a technical glitch, and more like a warning, the call to adventure. Tommy was still staring at his hands when the gym's front door chimed, announcing a new arrival. The sound shouldn't have mattered, people came and went all day, but something made him look up from his contemplation of the black tape wrapped around his knuckles. 2 men in dark suits stood at the reception desk, their presence immediately out of place among the tank tops and athletic gear. They weren't the usual type who wandered into elite combat academy, too clean, too formal, carrying themselves with a rigid posture that screamed military or government. The receptionist, a young woman named Casey who'd been working there for 3 years, looked confused as she spoke with them. Tommy's instincts, honed by years of reading opponents and sensing trouble, went on high alert. He drifted closer, pretending to examine the weight rack while straining to hear their conversation. "We need to speak with Thomas Sullivan," the taller man was saying. His voice carried an authority that made Casey unconsciously straighten in her chair. "I can check if he's available for a consultation," she replied, reaching for the appointment book. "Are you interested in training, or—" "This isn't about training." The second man produced a leather wallet, flashing what looked like official identification too quickly for Casey to read properly. "Official business." Tommy's blood turned to ice water. The rational part of his mind scrambled for innocent explanations. Tax issues, endorsement complications, routine questions about something unrelated. But the paranoid voice that had been whispering since the missing footage discovery now screamed that this was connected to the video, to Chuck Norris, to whatever was happening to his reflexes. He had a choice to make, and he had maybe 30 seconds to make it. Option 1, walk over and face whatever these men wanted. Deal with it head-on like he'd always dealt with problems, using the same direct approach that had carried him through 15 years of professional fighting. Tommy the Hurricane Sullivan had never backed down from a challenge. Option 2, slip out the back exit that led to the employee parking area. Buy time to think, to understand what was happening before walking into a situation he couldn't control. It felt like cowardice, but it also felt like survival. "Is he here now?" the taller man pressed. Casey's eyes automatically flicked toward the training floor, searching for Tommy among the scattered athletes. In about 10 seconds, she'd spot him and point him out. Once that happened, running would look guilty as hell and probably make everything worse. Tommy's phone buzzed in his pocket. Without thinking, he glanced at it. A text from an unknown number, the parking garage. Level B-2, come alone, now. His hands shook as he read the message again. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Someone was watching, orchestrating this moment. The same someone who had made the security footage vanish, who had asked Sal those mysterious questions about Tommy's background. Mr. Sullivan? Casey had spotted him. Her voice carried across the gym, causing several fighters to look up from their training. There are some men here who'd like to speak with you. The two suits turned toward him in perfect synchronization, their movements too precise to be natural. Tommy caught a glimpse of their faces, forgettable features arranged in professionally neutral expressions, the kind of men trained to blend in and be overlooked, except when they needed to be intimidating. Tommy Sullivan? The taller one took a step forward. We'd like a few minutes of your time. Every instinct screamed at him to run. The text message burned in his mind, the parking garage. Level B-2, come alone, now. Someone else was pulling strings, offering an alternative to whatever these official-looking men represented. But who? And why should he trust a mysterious text over federal agents or whatever these men were? Just give me 1 second, Tommy called out, forcing his voice to remain steady. Let me grab my gear. He turned toward his gym bag, mind racing through possibilities. The back exit was 30 feet away, past the weight section and through a door that led to a maze of service corridors. He could make it if he moved fast and caught them off guard. But running would confirm their suspicions about whatever they suspected him of. It would make him look guilty of something he didn't understand. The phone buzzed again. They're not here to talk. Move, now. Tommy's career, his reputation, his entire carefully constructed life, balanced on this moment. Face the suits and hope this was all a misunderstanding, or trust a mysterious message and disappear into whatever rabbit hole had opened beneath his feet. He looked at his reflection in the gym's mirrors one last time. Tommy the Hurricane Sullivan, rising MMA star, confident and in control. After today, he suspected that version of himself might not exist anymore. The choice was his, and time was running out. Tommy's hands trembled as he reached for his gym bag, the simple motion feeling like it might determine the rest of his life. The weight of every decision he'd ever made pressed down on his shoulders. 15 years of clawing his way up from nothing, transforming himself from a street kid in Dublin into one of the most recognizable faces in mixed martial arts. Mr. Sullivan? The taller suit took another step forward, polished shoes clicking against the gym's concrete floor. We really do need that conversation. The text message burned in Tommy's mind like a brand. They're not here to talk. Move, now. But who was sending these warnings? The same phantom who had erased the security footage? Someone connected to Chuck Norris? The rational part of his brain insisted this was paranoia, that government agents didn't appear because of trash talk videos. The primal part, the fighter's instinct that had kept him alive in back alley scraps and championship bouts, screamed danger. Tommy's reflection fractured across the gym's mirror wall as he stood frozen between choices. In those fragmented images, he saw every version of himself. The hungry kid who'd thrown his first punch at age 12, the amateur who'd fought for grocery money, the professional who'd built an empire on controlled violence. All of it could disappear based on what he did in the next 10 seconds. I've got everything I need, he said, shouldering his bag with forced casualness. Around him, the gym's daily rhythm continued. Fighters sparring, weights clanking, the steady percussion of jump ropes. His world, where problems could be solved with precision and power, felt suddenly fragile. Marcus caught his eye from across the training floor, raising an eyebrow in silent question. Tommy had never run from anything in his life, even as a kid getting jumped by older boys, even facing opponents who outweighed him by 40 pounds. Even when doctors said his injured shoulder would never be the same. Tommy the Hurricane Sullivan stood and fought, but this wasn't a fight he understood. The shorter suit was speaking into a nearly invisible earpiece, his lips barely moving. Whatever response he received made his partner nod slightly, a communication so subtle it looked choreographed. These weren't ordinary government bureaucrats. They moved with the kind of precision that suggested serious training, serious backing. Tommy's phone buzzed again. Service corridor. Behind the weight rack. 30 seconds. His career flashed before his eyes like a drowning man's final moments. The Lamborghini in the parking lot, the penthouse overlooking the strip, the endorsement deals that had transformed him from fighter to brand. The upcoming bout with Derek Blackwood, his shot at a title eliminator that could launch him into superstardom, all of it balanced on a knife's edge. More than that, though, was the deeper fear gnawing at his chest, the reflexes that felt just slightly off during training, the missing security footage, the mysterious calls to Sal asking about his background. Something was systematically unraveling his life, piece by piece, and he didn't understand the rules of this new game. "Tommy?" Casey's voice carried confusion and growing concern. Other gym members were starting to notice the tension, conversations dropping to whispers as they sensed something wrong in their sanctuary. The suits began walking toward him with measured steps, no longer making any pretense of casual conversation. Whatever window of opportunity existed was closing fast. Tommy thought about his father, dead now 8 years, who'd taught him that a man faces his problems head-on. But his father had never dealt with mysterious government agents and impossible physical phenomena that defied explanation. "Look, if this is about taxes or something," Tommy began, buying precious seconds. "It's not about taxes, Mr. Sullivan." The taller man's voice carried finality. "We need to discuss your recent activities, specifically your commentary regarding certain protected individuals." Protected individuals. Chuck Norris was a protected individual? The absurdity of it would have been laughable if not for the dead seriousness in the man's eyes. Tommy's mouth went dry as the implications crashed over him. The video hadn't just been trash talk. It had somehow crossed lines he didn't know existed. 20 feet away, the text read, "Move or they take you." Tommy's hands shook as he deleted the message, muscle memory from years of destroying evidence of his wilder nights. But this felt different, permanent, life-changing. If he ran now, there would be no going back to the comfortable certainty of his old life. If he stayed and faced whatever these men represented, he might lose everything anyway. The weight of choice paralyzed him. Everything he'd built, everyone who depended on him. Sal, Marcus, even Casey at the front desk, who was putting herself through college on the job he'd helped create for her. Running meant abandoning all of it for a mystery that might be nothing more than elaborate paranoia. But staying meant trusting men whose very presence felt wrong on a molecular level. The suits were 15 feet away and closing. Tommy closed his eyes, took one last breath of the gym air that had been his home for 6 years, and made his choice. Tommy spun toward the weight rack and ran. Not the calculated retreat of a tactical fighter, not the measured withdrawal he'd used countless times in the octagon. This was pure primal flight. His gym bag bounced against his hip as he weaved between startled athletes, muscle memory guiding him through the familiar maze of equipment, even as his mind screamed that he was destroying everything he'd spent 15 years building. "Hey!" The sharp command echoed behind him, followed by the sound of polished shoes breaking into pursuit. "Mr. Sullivan, stop!" A heavyweight doing deadlifts looked up in confusion as Tommy vaulted over a bench, nearly colliding with Maria Santos as she finished a set of squats. The entire gym was staring now. Fighters, trainers, members who came here seeking the stability and order that Tommy had always represented. Their shocked faces blurred past as he sprinted toward the service corridor, each step feeling like a betrayal of everything he'd stood for. The service door was unmarked gray metal, the kind of exit he'd passed 1,000 times without thinking. His hand hit the push bar with enough force to bang it against the wall, and suddenly he was in a narrow corridor lined with pipes and electrical conduits. The familiar sounds of the gym, grunting, weights clanking, the steady rhythm of training, immediately muted to a distant hum. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows as Tommy ran deeper into the building's guts. Left turn, right turn, following instincts he didn't know he possessed. Behind him, the service door crashed open again, followed by heavy footsteps and urgent voices speaking in codes he didn't understand. His phone buzzed. Elevator bank. End of the hall. Tommy's lungs burned as he reached a service elevator he'd never known existed. The doors stood open as if waiting for him, revealing an interior that looked nothing like the public elevators in the building's main areas. No mirrors, No polished steel, just bare metal walls and a panel with more buttons than any normal elevator should have. He dove inside and stabbed the button marked B2, his hands shaking so badly he nearly missed. The doors closed with hydraulic smoothness just as shouts echoed from the corridor behind him. The elevator descended past floors that shouldn't exist, carrying him away from everything solid and comprehensible in his life. When the doors opened again, Tommy stepped into what looked like a parking garage from another dimension. The ceiling was too low, the lighting too dim, and the air carried an ozone smell that made his skin crawl. A handful of black sedans sat scattered across the space like chess pieces, their windows too dark to see through. Mr. Sullivan. Tommy spun toward the voice and found himself facing a woman in her 50s, gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a charcoal suit that somehow made the men upstairs look casual. She stood beside one of the black cars as if she'd been waiting there for hours. "Who the hell are you?" Tommy's voice cracked like a teenager's. "Someone who's been tracking your situation with great interest." She gestured toward the car. "We need to talk and we don't have much time. My colleagues upstairs are not known for their patience." "Your colleagues?" Tommy's paranoia spiked. "So you're all—" "No." Her interruption was sharp. "Very much not. The men pursuing you work for interests that would prefer to contain this situation quietly. I represent parties who believe you deserve to understand what's happening to you before you disappear into a government black site." The casual mention of black sites made Tommy's knees weak. This was insane. 3 days ago, his biggest worry was whether Derek Blackwood would try to take him down in the first round. Now he was in some secret parking garage talking to mysterious government agents about disappearing. "The video," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "This is about the Chuck Norris video. That video was the catalyst, yes. But what's happening to you, the physical changes, the missing footage, that began before you ever picked up that camera?" She opened the car door. "Mr. Sullivan, everything you think you know about your abilities, your career, even your identity is about to change. You can come with me and learn the truth, or you can go back upstairs and spend the rest of your life in a facility that doesn't officially exist." Tommy stared at the open car door, a threshold between his old life and something unimaginable. Through the garage's concrete ceiling, he could almost hear the gym continuing its daily routine, fighters training for battles they understood, following rules that made sense, pursuing dreams built on predictable foundations. That world was gone now. He'd crossed the line the moment he ran, burned every bridge the moment he chose mystery over surrender. There was no going back to being Tommy the Hurricane Sullivan, rising MMA star. That man had died in a service elevator somewhere between the gym and this underground nightmare. He got in the car. The car's interior felt like a sensory deprivation chamber, black leather that absorbed sound, windows tinted so dark the garage outside disappeared into shadow. Tommy's hands found the door handle instinctively, but the woman was already pulling away from the underground parking area through an exit he hadn't even noticed. "Where are we going?" His voice sounded foreign in the muffled space. "Somewhere those men can't follow, at least not immediately." She navigated through what seemed like a maze of underground tunnels, taking turns that defied Tommy's mental map of Las Vegas. "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I worked for the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency for 12 years before certain ethical disagreements led to my departure. DARPA." Tommy had heard the name whispered in conspiracy circles, usually connected to science fiction fantasies about super soldiers and mind control. The fact that it was being mentioned in his actual life made his stomach lurch. "The Chuck Norris video," he said again, clinging to the one concrete thing he understood. "This is all because I called an old movie star washed up?" Dr. Chen's laugh held no humor. "Charles Ray Norris hasn't been just a movie star for 40 years, Mr. Sullivan. He was recruited by classified programs in the 1970s, experimental research into human performance enhancement that makes today's pharmaceutical scandals look like vitamin deficiencies. The tunnel they were driving through opened into an underground facility that definitely didn't appear on any city planning maps." Tommy glimpsed laboratories through reinforced windows, equipment that belonged in science fiction films, and personnel wearing ID badges with security clearances he couldn't read. "This is insane," Tommy whispered. You're telling me Chuck Norris is some kind of government super soldier? The programs were officially discontinued in 1987 after incidents that required significant cleanup, but certain subjects retained abilities that defied conventional understanding. Mr. Norris was classified as a permanent asset, someone whose capabilities had been fundamentally altered on a cellular level. Dr. Chen parked in a space marked with symbols Tommy didn't recognize. Around them, other vehicles sat like sleeping predators. Modified cars, trucks with antenna arrays, and what looked like an armored personnel carrier painted flat black. The video triggered automatic monitoring protocols that have been dormant for decades, she continued. The moment you published that footage, systems began analyzing threat levels and response parameters. What you experienced, the reflexes, the missing security footage, the physical degradation, those weren't accidents or medical conditions. They were countermeasures. Tommy's world tilted on its axis. Countermeasures? Defensive responses built into the protection matrix surrounding certain classified individuals. Think of it as an immune system for state secrets. When someone poses a threat, even unknowingly, the system responds to neutralize that threat through increasingly sophisticated means. They walked toward a steel door that opened with facial recognition scanners. Inside, Tommy found himself in a facility that looked like a cross between a medical laboratory and a military command center. Technicians in white coats worked alongside personnel in tactical gear, all moving with the purposeful efficiency of people accustomed to handling impossible situations. The men who came to your gym represent the containment division, Dr. Chen explained as she led him through corridors, lined with doors marked only with numbers and symbols. Their job is to quietly remove complications before they become public problems. You would have been classified as a Level 3 information security risk and disappeared into administrative limbo. A massive display screen dominated one wall, showing what looked like a real-time map of Las Vegas with pulsing red dots scattered across the grid. Tommy's gym showed as a bright crimson circle with expanding rings around it. What is that? Search pattern. They're tracking your known associates, reviewing your financial records, analyzing your communication patterns. Within 6 hours, they'll have a complete psychological profile and threat assessment. Anyone connected to you becomes a potential vector for information leakage. Tommy thought about Marcus, still at the gym, probably wondering why his training partner had suddenly sprinted away from federal agents. Sal, whose mysterious phone calls now made terrifying sense. Even Casey, who had the misfortune of being present when the suits arrived. You're saying everyone I know is in danger because I made a stupid video? Not everyone. But the system doesn't take chances. Dr. Chen stopped at a door marked with a biohazard symbol. The good news is that you're not the first person to stumble into this particular nightmare. We've been developing countermeasures of our own. She opened the door to reveal a room that looked like a high-tech medical facility crossed with a torture chamber. Examination tables surrounded by equipment Tommy couldn't identify, monitoring systems that hummed with barely contained power, and in the center of it all, a chair that looked designed to restrain someone very dangerous. The process is called neural pattern reconstruction, Dr. Chen said. We can't undo what's been done to you, but we can teach you to fight back. The question is whether you're willing to let us fundamentally alter who you are in order to save who you might become. Tommy stared at the chair, understanding that another threshold waited before him. Behind lay the wreckage of his normal life. Ahead lay something that might not be human anymore. Tommy's legs felt like lead as he stared at the restraint chair, its metal surfaces gleaming under the harsh laboratory lights. The leather straps looked worn from use, and dark stains on the headrest suggested this wasn't Dr. Chen's first patient. Everything in his fighter's instincts screamed to run, but there was nowhere left to go. What exactly does fundamentally alter mean? His voice came out as a rasp. Dr. Chen moved to a control panel beside the chair, her fingers dancing across touch screens that displayed brainwave patterns and genetic sequences Tommy couldn't begin to understand. The countermeasures affecting you operate on a neurological level. They're rewriting your muscle memory, degrading your reflexes, essentially erasing 15 years of training. To fight back, we need to give you new pathways, enhanced connections that can resist external manipulation. Enhanced how? The same technology that created Chuck Norris and others like him. We reverse-engineered it from subjects who escaped government control in the 1980s. She turned to face him, her expression grave. But there are risks. The process doesn't just enhance your physical abilities. It fundamentally alters how your brain processes reality. Some subjects experienced severe psychological fragmentation. Others developed capabilities that made them difficult to contain. Tommy thought about Marcus, probably fielding calls from reporters by now as news of his sudden disappearance spread. The gym would be swarming with investigators, his absence dissected by every MMA blog and forum. His reputation was already destroyed. The fighter who ran from mysterious suits would never live that down. But reputation meant nothing if he disappeared into a government black site. How long do I have to decide? Dr. Chen's expression darkened as she glanced at a wall monitor showing the expanding search grid. The containment team is systematic but not patient. They've already visited your apartment and frozen your financial accounts. Within the hour, they'll start bringing in your known associates for voluntary questioning. The image of Marcus or Sal sitting in some windowless room, confused and terrified, being questioned about Tommy's loyalties and psychological state, made his stomach clench. These people, his people, were about to be dragged into a nightmare they couldn't possibly understand. What happens to them if I do this? If the process works, you become capable of defending yourself and those you care about. If it doesn't, she didn't finish the sentence. Tommy approached the chair like a condemned man walking to the electric chair. The restraints were sophisticated, designed to hold someone with superhuman strength. Up close, he could see monitoring leads and injection ports built into the armrests. This wasn't just about mental conditioning. Dr. Chen, a technician's voice crackled through an intercom. We're detecting movement in the upper levels, multiple vehicles approaching the main access points. Her jaw tightened. They found us faster than expected. She turned back to Tommy, urgency replacing her clinical demeanor. Mr. Sullivan, we're out of time. Either you trust me right now or you spend the rest of your life wondering what kind of man you might have become. The laboratory suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in as Tommy realized he was trapped between two versions of hell: surrender to mysterious government forces or submit to an experimental procedure that might destroy his mind. Neither option came with guarantees, and both meant saying goodbye to Tommy the Hurricane Sullivan forever. But as he looked at the chair, something deeper stirred in his chest, not just fear or desperation, but anger. For 15 years, he'd dedicated himself to becoming the best fighter he could be through discipline, sacrifice, and countless hours of brutal training. Some faceless system had decided to erase all of that because he'd made a stupid joke about an aging movie star. They'd taken his career, his reputation, his safety, and now they were threatening the people he cared about. All because he'd crossed some invisible line he never knew existed. Tommy the Hurricane Sullivan had never backed down from a fight in his life. He wasn't about to start now. What do you need me to do? Dr. Chen was already moving, her hands flying across control panels as technicians rushed to prepare the equipment. Sit down and try to stay calm. The initial injection will feel like ice water in your veins, followed by a burning sensation as the neural enhancers take effect. After that, Mr. Sullivan, you'll discover whether you're strong enough to become something that can fight back against forces that aren't supposed to exist. Tommy settled into the chair as the restraints closed around his wrists and ankles with mechanical precision. Above him, monitors came alive with scrolling data streams and real-time biological readouts. The laboratory hummed with barely contained energy, like a storm building pressure before it unleashed itself on the world. Through the facility's reinforced walls, he could hear the distant sound of vehicles and voices, the containment team closing in on their location. The injection port pressed cold against his neck as Dr. Chen made final adjustments to the equipment. Ready? She asked. Tommy closed his eyes and thought about Marcus, about Sal, about everyone counting on him to become something more than he'd ever imagined possible. Do it. The injection hit Tommy's bloodstream like liquid lightning. Dr. Chen hadn't exaggerated about the cold. It felt like Arctic water flooding through his veins, spreading from his neck down through his chest and into his extremities. His teeth chattered uncontrollably as the restraints held him in place. the leather straps cutting into his wrists as his body convulsed against the alien sensation. Neural pathways responding, a technician called out from somewhere beyond the blinding overhead lights, synaptic activity increasing exponentially. Then came the fire. The burning sensation started in his spine and exploded outward like molten steel being poured through his nervous system. Tommy's back arched against the chair, his jaw clenched so tight he thought his teeth might shatter. Every muscle fiber screamed, as if being rewired at the cellular level, which, he realized through the haze of agony, was probably exactly what was happening. Heart rate spiking, another voice warned. Blood pressure critical. Hold steady, Dr. Chen commanded. This is the integration phase. Mr. Sullivan, stay with us. But Tommy was already somewhere else, his consciousness fragmenting as the enhancement process tore through 15 years of learned reflexes and rebuilt them into something alien. He could feel his muscle memory dissolving. The countless hours of perfecting his left hook, the precise footwork that had made him a nightmare in the octagon, the defensive instincts that had kept him conscious through hundreds of sparring sessions, all of it melting away like ice in a furnace. In its place came something else, something that felt like drinking electricity while falling through infinite darkness. His vision exploded into geometric patterns that hurt to perceive. Through the facility's reinforced walls, he could suddenly hear conversations happening 3 floors above them. The containment team's radio chatter became as clear as if they were standing beside him. Tactical positions, search patterns, kill orders disguised as administrative protocols. Subject is experiencing sensory cascade, someone reported. Neurological integration at 60%. Tommy tried to speak but found his vocal cords paralyzed as the enhancement process rewrote his entire nervous system. His fighter's instincts, honed through years of combat, were being systematically dismantled and rebuilt with capabilities that defied human limitations. He could feel his reflexes accelerating beyond anything possible, his spatial awareness expanding to encompass the entire laboratory complex. But with the physical changes came something darker. Memories that weren't his own began bleeding through the enhancement matrix, flashes of classified facilities, experimental subjects who hadn't survived the process, and footage of what happened to people who developed abilities beyond government control. Tommy saw Chuck Norris not as the aging movie star he'd mocked, but as a weapon created in laboratories like this one, shaped by procedures that transformed human beings into something else entirely. The worst part was understanding that once the process completed, there would be no going back. Tommy the Hurricane Sullivan was dying in this chair, being systematically erased and replaced by something that might wear his face, but possessed capabilities that would forever separate him from normal humanity. Integration approaching completion, Dr. Chen announced. Mr. Sullivan, in approximately 30 seconds, you're going to experience a neurological reset. When you come back online, everything will be different. Through his enhanced hearing, Tommy could detect the containment team's approach. Boots on metal staircases, weapons being readied, tactical commands being whispered into throat mics. They were less than 2 minutes from breaching the laboratory, and when they arrived, they would find either a successful enhancement or a corpse in this chair. The burning sensation reached a crescendo that transcended pain and became something resembling rebirth. Tommy felt his consciousness scatter across the enhancement matrix like light through a prism, each fragment being analyzed, modified, and reassembled according to parameters that reduced human identity to adjustable variables. His last coherent thought before the reset was a prayer that whoever emerged from this chair would still care enough about Marcus and Sal to fight for them. Then the lights went out. When Tommy's awareness returned, the world had become a symphony of information he'd never been able to perceive before. He could sense the molecular composition of the air he was breathing, track the heartbeats of every person in the facility, and process the tactical situation unfolding above them with computer-like precision. The restraints fell away from his wrists, but he remained perfectly still in the chair, analyzing his new capabilities with clinical detachment. His body felt simultaneously familiar and alien, the same physical form housing a consciousness that operated according to fundamentally different rules. "Welcome back, Mr. Sullivan," Dr. Chen said softly. "How do you feel?" Tommy turned to look at her, and the movement carried a fluid precision that belonged to something beyond human limitation. When he spoke, His voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in frequencies normal humans couldn't hear. "Like I could tear this building apart with my bare hands," he said. "Is that normal?" Dr. Chen's expression mixed professional satisfaction with barely concealed fear. "You've just become one of maybe 6 people on Earth with your capabilities. Normal doesn't apply anymore." Above them, explosive charges detonated as the containment team breached the facility's outer defenses. "Time to find out what you can do." The dark moment. Tommy rose from the chair like a predator uncoiling, his enhanced senses mapping the facility with terrifying clarity. Through reinforced concrete and steel, he could track the containment team's descent, 12 operatives moving with military precision, their heartbeats steady, their weapons charged with some kind of electromagnetic pulse designed to disable enhanced subjects. "They're using suppression fields," Dr. Chen warned, her fingers flying across emergency protocols. "Your new abilities won't function at full capacity if they—" The lights died as the facility's power grid went offline. In the sudden darkness, Tommy discovered his first limitation. His enhanced vision, which had been processing the electromagnetic spectrum like a living radar array, immediately began to deteriorate. The crystal-clear awareness of his surroundings collapsed into fragments, leaving him with human-level senses trapped in a body that no longer remembered how to compensate for ordinary limitations. "Emergency power should engage in—" Dr. Chen's voice cut off as red emergency lighting bathed the laboratory in hellish shadows. Tommy tried to move toward the exit and nearly collapsed as his enhanced reflexes misfired. His legs, calibrated for superhuman speed and precision, couldn't adjust to normal human locomotion. Each step sent him lurching sideways like a drunk man trying to navigate an earthquake aftershocks. "The suppression field is interfering with neural integration," a technician called out. "His enhancement matrix is fragmenting." Through the chaos of his disintegrating senses, Tommy heard something that made his blood freeze, Marcus's voice echoing through the facility's communication system. Tommy, where are you, man? These people said you were in trouble." Dr. Chen's face went pale in the emergency lighting. "They brought your friend as psychological leverage. Standard containment protocol. Use emotional attachments to ensure compliance." Tommy staggered toward the laboratory's exit, his enhanced hearing picking up fragments of radio chatter. "Subject's trainer secured. Emotional manipulation authorized. Terminate if enhancement proves unstable." The containment team hadn't just found Marcus, they were using him as bait. "I have to get to him," Tommy growled, but his legs betrayed him again. The enhancement process had rewired his nervous system for capabilities he couldn't access under suppression, leaving him weaker than he'd been before the procedure. "Mr. Sullivan, listen to me." Dr. Chen grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "The suppression field affects enhanced subjects differently. Some lose motor function entirely. Others experience complete psychological breakdown. You're fighting 15 years of muscle memory that's been overwritten with capabilities your brain can't currently process." Explosive charges detonated somewhere above them, closer now. Dust rained from the ceiling as the containment team systematically demolished barriers between them and the laboratory. Tommy tried to form a plan, but his enhanced cognition kept stuttering like a computer with corrupted software. Strategic analysis would begin, showing him tactical options and probability matrices, then collapse into static as the suppression field interfered with his neural pathways. "Tommy!" Marcus's voice came again, closer now. "What the hell is going on? These guys won't tell me anything." Through his deteriorating enhanced senses, Tommy caught something else, Sal's distinctive cologne and the sound of his labored breathing. They had both of them. Everyone Tommy cared about was now trapped in this nightmare because of his moment of stupid arrogance. "Dr. Chen," Tommy forced out between waves of neural disruption. "Is there a way to reverse this? To go back to what I was before?" Her silence told him everything he needed to know. The laboratory door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Containment operatives poured through the breach, their faces hidden behind tactical masks, their weapons trained on Tommy with mechanical precision. "Subject is to be secured for transport," their leader announced. "Civilian assets are secured on level 3. Compliance ensures their continued safety." Tommy tried to stand, to fight, to be the warrior he'd spent 15 years becoming. but his enhanced body refused to obey. The suppression field had turned his improvements into liabilities, leaving him helpless in the chair where his old self had died. Through the tactical team's formation, he saw Marcus being escorted in restraints, confusion and terror written across his face. Behind him, Sal looked older than Tommy had ever seen him, his usual confidence replaced by the hollow expression of a man watching his carefully constructed world collapse. "Tommy," Marcus called out when he saw the laboratory set up. "Jesus Christ, what did they do to you?" The question hit harder than any punch Tommy had ever taken. What had they done to him? He was no longer human, but he wasn't enhanced either. He was something broken, caught between two states of being, belonging fully to neither. The containment team leader stepped forward, weapon trained on Tommy's center mass. "Mr. Sullivan, you and your associates are being transferred to a secure facility for debriefing and evaluation. Resistance will be met with appropriate force." Tommy met Marcus's eyes across the laboratory and saw the exact moment his friend realized they weren't going to survive this intact. Whatever came next, Tommy the Hurricane Sullivan, both the man and the enhanced weapon, had failed to protect the people who mattered most. Everything was lost.